Mapping your diaphragm is not quite as easy as, say, mapping a quadricep. Your diaphragm lives inside of the rib cage. It's hovering inside there like some kind of squid inside of a cave. So in order to map it, really what we need to do is find ways to pressurize into it. So we're going to do that with a Coregeous ball and also a little bit with our fingers. To find the front border of the diaphragm, all you have to do is locate the margin of your ribs. So you just want to look for the flaps where your ribs hang down. And the easiest way or the easiest access point is a little bit out to the side, not fully to the side, but not fully to the front, but split the difference. And you'll exhale and let your fingers slide up underneath that rib margin and see if you can actually do little piano fingers here. And if you are, you're actually palpating the muscle that it directly connects with, which is the transversus abdominis, but you're folding that transversus abdominis up against the actual respiratory diaphragm. And then you can take a couple breaths here into your abdomen, and you'll feel the diaphragm descend into your fingers as you breathe. Or you could also just go, ha, and that'll kick your fingers right out. So to continue to map it, we're going to look at how we can place pressures into the rib cage. So the Coregeous ball is an ideal tool for this. You can use a rolled up yoga mat or a rolled up towel or blanket. You'll place the Coregeous ball on the side of your rib cage, lay on the ground, and my other hand here is going to press into these lower 6 ribs, which is really where the diaphragm lives. And you can breathe into the hand and to the Coregeous ball at the same time, spreading the ribs, which stretches the diaphragm in this case. This is a rib cage breath, an abdominal breath. It's going to move the diaphragm downward, but a rib cage breath, the diaphragm is tractioned inside the chamber. And then exhale and try to press the ribs together. And this will actually dome the diaphragm. The diaphragm will actually start to squinch together and it will peak inside the ribs. I'm inhaling again. You can actually temporarily hold your breath and even activate the muscles inside the rib cage, kind of freeze frame the diaphragm like a taut trampoline, and then exhale and try to squish the ribs together. From here, I'm going to move the Coregeous ball towards the front of the rib cage and towards the back of the rib cage. So essentially I'm thinking of just rolling the Coregeous ball around one hemisphere of the diaphragm and one hemisphere of the rib cage. And if this makes your neck feel awkward, you can put your hand underneath your head or let your head rest on a block. But this is just playing around and trying to manipulate the ribs, the diaphragm, and even the lungs within. Then you'll do the same thing on the other side. You wouldn't want to leave out the other hemisphere of your ribs, or rather the other hemisphere of your diaphragm. You essentially have these 2 springy pancake-like muscles inside of the rib cage that are fused together at a central tendon. That central tendon happens to be a bed that your heart rests on. So now your hand overpressing, this is called overpress, by the way. And then on inhale, deliberately breathing into the rib cage so that the ribs expand and your diaphragm is tractioned while it is in a contracted state. And then exhale. See if you can clip the ribs together, forming a circle, which of course they can't. They can't rehoop themselves. Inhale. Hold, this time, little contraction in there. And then exhale, squinch down. And so continue with the mapping of the other half. So this is my right rib cage. And trying to travel towards the sternum and then away from the sternum towards the spine, really creating a little bit of a C shape and telling the lungs and telling the diaphragm that you know where they are. You're coming for it, but you're coming for it with pressure from outside and pressure from inside by continuing to breathe. The other location that the diaphragm connects to in the rib cage is the bottom of the xiphoid process. It's really the bottom of your sternum or the back of the xiphoid process. So it's really hard to get in there. You're well protected. But what you can do is take the Coregeous ball and just do a little pressure, a little squiggle, to let the diaphragm know you know where it lives. I know you're there. I know you're connecting there. And to breathe into your chest in this place. The diaphragm is also connecting to the soft tissues directly below it, in particular, a very deep core muscle, the transversus abdominus. And so we can do the very same experiment for the transversus abdominus, which essentially is like the hoop skirt of the skirt shape of the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is like a double skirt, shaped like a skirt inside the rib cage, but then the skirt continues to be a very elegant, 1800s lady. So the Coregeous Ball comes onto the side of the waist. You breathe in. This time you're trying to breathe so that you do a diaphragm expansion, or rather an abdominal expansion as the diaphragm descends. Hold your breath, contract just temporarily, and then exhale and let go. You do that a few times, and then you'll do the same mapping. You'll go from the low back to the navel in that C-shaped way, just attempting to improve the mobility of the soft tissues that are directly connected to the diaphragm. Because your diaphragm really exists in a vacuum, it exists in this cove of bones known as the rib cage, the diaphragm's sense of itself is very dim. Usually, the only time we sense the diaphragm is in the context of hiccups or even retching or vomiting. Sometimes you'll actually feel pressures in the diaphragm, change in reverse. So again, we have to figure out how the diaphragm experiences itself by experiencing the myofascial structures that connect into it. So breathe into the waist, hold your breath, create tension, and then exhale, let go. And the same thing, squish towards the belly and squish towards the low back. So we're using the Coregeous Ball that's filled with your own air, or you're using a rolled up yoga mat or towel or whatever you're using to add pressure to challenge the tissues that are connected to the diaphragm. Now, an exercise like the diaphragm vacuum is one of the optimal or ideal exercises for really challenging your perception of the range of motion of the diaphragm. But here, we're just trying to get a sense of the tissues that it roams into. When you map your diaphragm, when you contact it in this way, you will see improvements in digestion, breathing, posture, mood, your relaxation response. Really, there's a laundry list of endless benefits to connecting with your own respiratory diaphragm.